Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Backlog Busters, where every other Monday I'm busting out my gaming backlog one video at a time and letting you know if after all these years these games are worth playing today. In this episode, we're waiting for the tomorrow that will never come in the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages. Last time on Backlog Busters, we rescued the land of Holdrum and saved the Oracle of Seasons, but much like a game of whack-a-mole, evils popped up somewhere else seconds later. So I've dusted off my steed, loaded up my next adventure, and I've got some questions. Because of how much I like the Seasons mechanic, how's the new Ages mechanic, and the game in general going to compare? Plus, how does this game stack up to the other few Zelda games I've played? Also, the last game ended with a literal to be continued, a first in the Zelda series. So will this really feel like a sequel? And what exactly gets linked to Link in this linked game? Well, we covered the history of these games in the last video, and I'm tired of waiting, so let's find answers starting with the things that I liked. These games link together somehow, and that's what most confused me before starting either of these games. So the short description is after finishing one of the games, you'll be given a code that you can use when starting up whatever Oracle game you play next, which turns that second game into a linked game, or a continuation of the plot started in Seasons for me. The most immediate benefit is you'll start with 4 hearts instead of 3, and Impa will give you a great deal on a Sword and Shield bundle instead of just the sword you would have been given if you started the series here. But most importantly, the storyline is altered with characters discussing your previous adventure and characters from the first game showing up to say hi. When I first recognized a character from Seasons, I was worried this would feel like Mad Libs with previous location pasted into text boxes, but the characters that do show up and the conversations you'll have felt like catching up with old friends. Plus, in addition to rescuing the second captured Oracle, don't forget there is extra story woven in, as Twin Rova from the first game continues to carry out some dark ritual that you'll be hoping to prevent as well. This all really adds to the feeling of this being a dedicated sequel, and not at all like some shoehorned in addition, which is honestly what I was expecting with the play in any order nature of these games. But don't put away that cartridge from your first adventure just yet, as to my surprise you'll need it for more than just a single code transfer at the start of the game. Visiting Vasu Jewelers in Seasons, I was given a code, and when taken to Ages, it let me bring a copy of all my rings into the second adventure. But then I found a character whose friend just traveled to Holodrum, without hearing the secret that might have prevented them from becoming a bag of bones. And you're asked to deliver this secret, which confused me. Did I really need to put Seasons back in, find the person, and enter the secret? What would that even do? Well, I delivered that secret in Seasons, and my bomb bag was upgraded by 10. Then I was given another secret that lets me receive that same upgrade in Ages. And listen, I'm not sure what's wrong with me because I usually dread a fetch quest, and I complained about the trading quest in Seasons for being tedious. But I was on the edge of my seat every time someone asked me to listen to their secret, save and quit, boot up a different game, and revisit an old friend in the hopes I'd upgrade an existing item. And it doesn't just stop with upgrades, as there are completely optional items that you'll be given through these secrets as well. So when someone mentioned a big sword that could only be forged by a massive Goron, I practically ripped the cartridge out to find out if I'd be receiving the item I was hoping for. Every new secret just felt like a mini side quest into a nostalgic land I only left 2 weeks ago, and it was an absolute blast. Back in Oracle of Seasons, I found the ability to wave a rod and cycle through 4 different seasonal variations of the overworld extremely impressive, in addition to the whole underworld that you can also explore. So I was a little concerned about how simple time travel would compare to that much content and variation. And maybe it was those low expectations coming in, but this time mechanic has much more drastic changes than anything in Seasons, and you really feel the effects of time much more than anything I did when just changing the weather. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the intro, where the possession of the Oracle of Ages causes dramatic changes in the present, with townsfolk seeing a lifetime pass in a second, whole creatures disappearing from the forest, and a grandchild frozen in time as their grandmother worriedly tries to shake them awake. But jumping into the past reveals possibly a worse fate, as the possessed Oracle and Queen Ambi force almost everyone in town to construct an evil black tower, and with time frozen, none are able to leave and sleep, working endlessly as the citizens ask for your aid. The tone of this second game felt way darker and more sad than people being a little chilly at the wrong time of year in Seasons. Luckily, the Harp of Ages can be used to travel between the times to start returning the land to normal, with your first ability only able to activate preset portals hidden around the world. But even with this limited power, you'll see the effects of time not only on the different generations of villagers, but also the entire landscape around you, with shops gone, rivers dried out, and even entire islands shifting throughout the years. I really enjoyed Oracle of Seasons, and I think that mechanic is still very unique and makes for great puzzles, but the control and effects of time in this game kind of make the Rod of Seasons feel like a recoloring effect, while in Ages it felt like I was traveling between two entirely different overworld maps. This new control over time also amps up the frequency and complexity of puzzles, even in the overworld. In Oracle of Seasons, it felt pretty straightforward to navigate. The tree would give you a new cardinal direction and you'd head off, changing seasons to bypass lakes, vegetation, and pits on your way to the dungeon. But the overworld in Oracle of Ages felt scrambled by comparison, so much so that every quadrant feels like its own larger puzzle, with the trek to a dungeon almost as complex as the dungeon itself. You'll be searching out and uncovering portals to get around obstacles, trading between generations, and rewinding rubble until it becomes a building, all in an effort to inch a little closer to that dungeon entrance. Not to mention the upgrades to your Harp of Ages that you'll receive later in the game, which will have you looking at the world in a whole new way each time. But that's all outside the dungeon, so what about inside? Well, if you felt the puzzles in Oracle of Seasons were too easy and wanted something a little meatier,
Lance wants something a bit meatier,
then Oracle of Ages is the game for you, as it features new mechanics and ideas that push past the style of puzzles I would have expected from a top-down Zelda, like hopping to change colors and reveal chameleon-like slimes, using off-brand Rubik's Cubes to change spotlights, or just requiring interesting combinations of items and powers much more frequently, even featuring dungeon-wide puzzles like a whole support system that shifts room layouts. And I was ecstatic to find that your harp actually does get used for a dungeon, something I wished Seasons had done. I felt like finishing Seasons left me with a good understanding of what seemed like a traditional Zelda puzzle, with some really good and interesting stuff in there. But Ages felt like I was being tested on that knowledge, with more tweaks and expansions on those ideas, and completely new ones allowing for more intricate and elaborate puzzles both in and out of the dungeons. Since I just saw the credits roll on one Zelda game and immediately booted up another, I was a little worried that I'd be recollecting the exact same items in dungeons and the excitement of finding a new item would fade as something I just had a moment ago. And yes, you will regain some basic ones pretty early, with the shovel, bombs, power bracelet all reappearing, but a lot of the items here are new. And if not new, they receive upgrades that differentiate them from what you had in Seasons, which managed to keep me excited with every new chest I open. Like this seed shooter that I thought was just a reskin slingshot, but this time it lets you ricochet seeds and shoot in 8 directions, which I know doesn't sound like much of a difference, but allows for a whole new style of puzzles and combat not seen in the last game. There also seem to be more combinations of items used, as in Seasons there were some rooms where I'd leave my sword behind, but here there were whole battles and stretches of time where I never needed my sword at all, and sometimes I'd need a 3rd or 4th item handy to deal with enemies, bosses, and puzzles. Plus, some of the most basic items get some love, like the shovel that I barely used other than to dig up soft dirt patches in the last game, are featured in boss battles and more. Any worry I had about encountering the same old items and getting bored immediately disappeared, as I was constantly surprised by new items, new upgrades, and all the new ways they could be used. Dear citizens of Labrina, I was unable to find the second mermaid key and retrieve all the essences of time. As I'm sure you'll soon find, I was also unable to determine how to defeat Smog, the boss made out of smoke. I failed to rescue Naru, the Oracle of Ages, which means the Black Tower will soon be constructed, and you are all most likely doomed. My sincerest apologies. Link. If through some random lightning strike while playing my Game Boy I'd been forced into this game world, and I was able to complete the trading quest for the appropriate postage stamp, that's the letter I would have had to send out. Because, as I said in my Seasons video, I've not played a Zelda or puzzle game where I haven't wandered aimlessly for too long and eventually had to get a hint. And not only is Ages no exception to that rule, I found it much more difficult than Seasons. While I love that bosses now require interesting new combinations of items and attacks, searching your pockets stuffed with weapons and 5 different seed types is a lot to consider in the heat of battle. But on the Game Boy Color with a limited amount of animations and detail, it was hard for me to tell if an enemy was invulnerable to an attack because I'd used the wrong item, hit the wrong spot, or accidentally attacked during an invincibility phase. There were several times I felt I'd used every single weapon available, only to give in, search for a hint, and discover that mystery seeds seemed to be a cure-all, but for damaging obtuse enemies. I've not really felt this in 3D Zeldas, because I think those just have a lot more detail available to give me context clues, or in 2D games like Seasons, where most likely the item you just picked up was the solution. Here, any item could be required at any time, which does make it hard to pick which item to try out. And staying on bosses a bit longer, the final lineup was formidable, with, I don't know, let's say a multi-phase, multi-boss gauntlet with no breaks, all of whom do a ton of damage with a status effect worse than poison being introduced towards the end, so bring some potions and some patience. Outside of the bosses, as I promised in the last video, I took notes. As I talked to everyone in the game, and the trading quest to upgrade your sword went so much smoother. And then I made the mistake of putting those notes away, only to find several more trading quests sprinkled throughout on the path to later game dungeons, which constantly stumped me. But again, your mileage is going to vary a lot here. As I've said, I struggle with puzzles in games, and I don't have a ton of experience with Zelda games, both in combat and in the language of the game's puzzles. Now, with all that in mind, how did I feel about this game overall, and would I recommend The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages as a game that should be on your backlog? Taken as an individual game, yes, I enjoyed this as much, if not more, than my time with Seasons. If you're interested in a unique time travel mechanic, enjoy complex puzzles, tough bosses, and trying to save a doomed world, you'll have a great time. And for everyone like me, maybe keep a walkthrough handy for a little hint, because it's worth finishing this adventure. But taken as a sequel and looking at this Oracle series as a whole, these two games are incredible. I truly do not understand how two full-length Zelda games released on the same day with such different worlds, mechanics, items, bosses, so much more. Also, the way these games link together in the order you choose and encourage you to revisit old locations to trade and find even more secrets is a tremendous idea on paper, but somehow they managed to pull it off extremely well. Now, to me, playing Seasons first felt like the almost perfect on-ramp, with Seasons being a little more straightforward, at least in finding the next dungeon. But let me know what order you played them in and if you think the opposite's better. Would it be nice if there were some clearer hints on where to go next or what items to use? Sure. Would I have appreciated secrets to auto-transfer instead of taking tons of pictures of my screen? Yeah. But it feels like a testament to these games that while I pushed Tears to the Kingdom to the side to play these, I didn't regret it. I only hope these become more readily available so that more people can play them. And I'll throw out my normal message that my opinion on this game is not meant to tarnish any fond memories you have of playing this. And if you love or still love these games, please tell me why in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experience and talk even more about these games. Just like in the last video, if you're looking to play or replay Oracle of Ages, prices rise and the eShop dies. And Nintendo's only solution is to wait for an unspecified date to be added to the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack subscription. Or if the Link's Awakening remake team surprises us all with a remaster, please? But that's it for this episode of Backlog Busters. Have you played Oracle of Ages or Seasons? What did you think? Should this be on others' backlogs? I definitely think it should. Let me know. I'd love to talk more about these games. And if you got a suggestion for another game I should clear off my backlog next, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button, and if you'd like to see more, tap the subscribe button. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.